All right, we are back. The 2026 WSL Championship Tour has recommenced after its mid-season break with CT7, the Outerknown Tahiti Pro, presented by IC. It's done and dusted, won by Erin Brooks and Seth Moniz. Congrats to both of them. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan, and I'm here today with Koa Smith. Koa, so stoked and honored to have you on the podcast to break down Tahiti. We're going to have to make sure this goes well because we'll want to persuade you to come back for more episodes in the future. But for listeners out there that may not be too familiar with you, what's kind of the 2-minute background on the life and times of Koa Smith?
Well, I was born 30 years ago. No. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to recap one of the most exciting contests I've ever watched. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Koa Smith. I was born and raised in Kauai, Hawaii. I grew up competing professionally, never got to the CT level, although I did have a moment where I maybe should have beat Kelly Slater on the beach at a Sunset CT event. I needed a 5.6. I got a 5.4. We had that moment. So I had a little taste of that flavor. I had some injuries that drew me away from competition, head injuries, and I ended up kind of exploring the traveling free surfing route and just exploring who I can be as like an unlimited version of myself. But yeah, I'm obsessed with surfing.
Yeah, and as someone who's been fortunate enough to be in and around it as long as I have too, I can attest to all the listeners out there, like, Koa, when I started, was like the prospect coming out of Hawaii and North America, and such a good all-around surfer. And I mean, I think it's one of the cool things about surfing that, you know, if you end up getting a little bit quieter on the competitive route for really talented surfers like yourself, you can kind of do the alternative route of like free surfing and traveling and kind of exploring inner and outer space, right? To kind of crib from the late Bill Hicks. So I'm so stoked to have you on the podcast, Noah.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, the Outerknown Tahiti Pro, presented by IC, as we said, CT7 of the 2026 season. It's in the books. Our first segment in this podcast is winners and losers from the end of the road. And for new listeners out there, these are strictly subjective picks from Koa and myself. We're trying to kind of pick at the stories behind the results a little bit. And Koa, I'll give you the honor. Kick us off with your first loser coming out of Tahiti.
100%. I mean, I think going into this contest, we all had a really close look of what this swell forecast was looking like. And if I was in the contest, I would have been very nervous. Like, it looked like we were going to have potential toe size, which we did. But I would say the loser was the winds. So as we showed up each day, that swell ended up being so powerful that it brought a lot of wind with us, a lot of weather as well. So that made the conditions just really tricky. If we would have had the wind come in at a couple degrees more southeast, then it would have been picture perfect, a little bit more like that Kelly John heat that made history. And I think we saw what that did to the different athletes in there. You know, it made it very, very challenging. And not only was it scary, but now it was imperfect. So there were some moments that I was feeling sorry for those guys in the jersey for sure.
That's a really interesting one. And I'm curious to get your take after I go into my first loser, if you feel like yours impacted this group or not. But the first loser for me coming out of the end of the road were actually the local Tahitian specialists who didn't really get the results that we'd maybe expect out there. On the women's side, you've got CT surfers Vahine Fierro and rookie Tia Zabrowski, both surfing for France, but spending, a lot of time growing up in French Polynesia. And both Vahine and Tia, they bowed out pretty early in round one. Vahine went down to Isabella Nichols. Tia went down to eventual winner Erin Brooks. There was the 14-year-old wild card, Kelia Gallina. She fared a lot better. She made the quarterfinals, so congrats to her. But then on the men's side, you had this really lethal wild card in Ameo. He lost in round one to eventual winner Seth Moniz. You got French Tahitian CT rookie Cowley Voss went down to Al Cleland in round three. So overall, and this is where I want to get your read, Ko, is I would think that maybe the conditions being a little bit wild and woolly would in some ways maybe kind of give the locals an advantage, because maybe they would have seen it more like that. Maybe they'd be able to pick kind of the diamonds in the rough out there, but maybe not. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe those kind of wins just kind of level it for everybody. What's your take on that?
I mean, it creates a sense of imperfection. And I think that's where like priority comes into play. And when that wave does bend on the reef perfectly and the wind like somehow works with it, maybe that other person had priority and capitalized on that moment. You could see when those guys are surfing and girls, they're working the reef differently than everyone else. I mean, they're born and raised with that wave. And also going into these bigger swells, they have no fear out there. Like they know what it's like. They committed to that sacrifice at a very young age, and that's what's kind of brought them to where they are now. Specifically, Emio, when I saw the swell forecast and that he won the trials, I was very excited. Like I would have put him to maybe win the event. Because if you look at most of the swells out there, him, Matahi, they're kind of like the standouts of each swell. And especially Emio is showing us what's possible consistently. Now you put a jersey on, you add that extra pressure, that extra like mathematical mind, combine that with some unruly winds. There's a couple extra factors there. And I think you saw that in the way that things turned out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess, in that situation too, going down in round one to the eventual event winner, that's a tall mountain to climb in hindsight as well. But who's your second loser coming out of Teahupo'o?
Second loser, I would say could have maybe Colin Robson, like that priority situation with Jack. Right. I can't say which was the right decision or not, but that was professional competitive surfing by both of them.
Right.
Because they're dealing with a quite a short interval, especially surfing big chopes. Like for those that don't know what it's like to surf big chopes, you can't really tell when there's a big set coming. You paddle over a wave and there's just a wall of water that's bigger than a palm tree, and you have a split second to decide if you're going or not. On top of that, figuring out who paddled, looking in and trying to see if they switch priority in time.
Right.
It's pretty nuts. But for Jack to just go and pull the trigger with confidence, I have priority. And then for Colin to be like, no, I have priority. I thought that was just like a pretty cool experience, but also ended up being a lose for Colin.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear you break that down too, right? Because it's like there's so many variables coming in such a small amount of time. And then people talk about like quick twitch muscles. It's like you need like quick twitch, like brain neurons firing in that, where it's like I'm taking in all this information, I'm making a calculation, and I'm going. And I love the way you broke that down. And I guess it's not totally similar to the second loser I have coming out of Tahiti, but it may relate, I guess, in hindsight. It's like, it's not broadly, not 100%, but like broadly, kind of the veteran generation on the women's tour, they had a rough outing. And a disclaimer, of course, like this is one event, so it's just one data point, not conclusive. And as we said, the conditions we had for this year's event, pretty wild, but not without a lot of opportunity. And if you take a look at the veterans on the women's tour, there was, Sally Fitzgibbons, 17th, Steph Gilmore, 17th, Tyler Wright, 17th, Caroline Marks, Lakey Peterson, Carissa Moore, all 9ths. And it was just kind of a rough outing for that group. In a way, you can make an argument that maybe Isabella Nichols was the only veteran presence on the women's side to crack the quarterfinals. She finished in the semifinals. But then when you I wonder if it's like a generational thing, right? Because that group of surfers we just named, when they were developing as young surfers, a wave like Teahupo'o wasn't on tour. So it's unlikely they had the incentive to be like, I need to go there and I need to figure it out and I need to build this into how I'm developing as like a world title contender down the track. Whereas you compare that with the younger generation on tour, events like Pipeline, events like Teahupo'o, they've been on the women's CT schedule for a few years now. So for them, it's like, I have to figure this wave out. I have to develop there as a teenager and in my 20s before I get to the tour so I can contend. I'm curious to get your read on that, like generationally, if you think that's got any weight to it, that theory.
I think so. I think some people are born with it as well. It's like some people like jumping off cliffs. You know, they like adrenaline, they like skydiving. Other people maybe choose not to. I think specifically the women were dealt with really tough conditions. And I think a lot of flow and luck kind of came into play with those conditions. It's imperfect, you know. I think we would have had a different game if it was perfect wins. Right. But I do see what you're saying, and I think we see that with the younger generation where they have that in mind. If I want to be a world champion, I have to jump off that cliff. Like I have to be a skydiver. I have to go on these waves, and I think, I mean, we can go into that whole thing in a little bit, but also just seeing the talent coming up, like it's a whole nother level in the barrel riding category with some of these younger girls. Like pretty soon we're not going to know that the difference between skill levels with girls and boys. I don't think, like, there's no more limits. They're just taking off no grab, doing whatever it takes, milking the barrel. They're reading, their intuition is forming with barrels at such a young age. It's intense. I mean, to know that you're going to be in this contest and there's a potential toe swell approaching, it's pretty scary. And how you deal with that fear is everything. If you can show up to it clear, committed, that's the difference between making it and not, you know?
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like, I think even at Pipe a few years ago, there was that sort of final day, and it felt like a real important moment in just women's tube riding, where it's like, you know, your Betty Lou's and your Molly Picklums and your Katie Simmers, and it's like this feels like a huge evolution in terms of what they're comfortable with. And you know, before we pivot to our winners, I think we each got one more loser. Who is your third loser coming out of Tahiti, Koa?
My third loser was Katie Simmers back. That was a bummer. I mean, she was a standout, absolutely. And to see her go down, we couldn't really see what happened underwater. Did you guys get an update on when it ended up happening?
I had not, but I think it was just more in the final day chaos, and I was the same. I was just like, oh, that's a huge bummer. She is so awesome out here, and it looked pretty rough. Like she's so tough too. So it's like when she goes to the channel and needs a minute, it's like, you know, something serious happened, but I don't know what the actual update is.
Yeah, I mean, to see what these people are putting themselves through, both girls and boys, they were going down, you know? And how many times can you roll the dice with that amount of power and that razor sharp reef? You know, people lose their lives. People get smoked. So it's treacherous, and to see that was kind of the main casualty of the event, I think was a huge win as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I hope she's good.
Yeah, me too. And we wish her a speedy recovery. And a less serious loser coming out of Tahiti for me was my WSL fantasy team, and it's something that probably won't recover. Pretty actually competitive category on events I've done poorly at, but I finished 17,844th. Women's side, I did all right. I had Katie, Molly, Alyssa, Nadia, Erin, and Vahine, so not too bad. But then the men's side, it was Gabriel, Iago, Cowley, Connor, Emio, and Ramsey was my only bright spot. But, you know, it is what it is. Do you play fantasy, Koa?
I probably have a team set that I haven't checked in a long time.
Maybe you won.
I never know where I am, and I mean, it definitely helps, like, really stay activated with the contest. I love that aspect. Like, you have an emotional tie beyond picking your friends, you know?
Sure.
So that's so cool. I gotta ask, was it 17,000 out of how many? Were you below there?
I mean, I didn't do as well as 17,843 teams, but if there's a million teams playing, that's still pretty good.
You did good.
Yeah. We won't say how many. It might be like
Pat on
20.
the back.
No, it's exactly. Let's switch gears. Who have you got for winners coming out at the end of the road?
Yeah, and kind of back to what I was talking about of that younger generation. Kelia Gallina is like,
Man.
she's surfing like she's a full-blown adult.
Right.
She didn't have any fear. She's letting go of her rail and pumping, making adjustments to make sure she makes the wave. And she's just like a child still, you know? But she's one of those people that were raised in the place. They were formed by the wave, and it shows. It's like John at Pipeline.
Right.
Cooley at Chopes as well. These people, they've been thinking about it. They've been watching it as they go through their development as humans, and then they get out there, and it's like that's their language. It might even be different on land. Like that's their happy spot, and it's amazing to watch. And where's she gonna go in the next 10 years? It's pretty interesting. I'm excited.
It's a great one. She was so impressive. And yeah, well, I mean, she turned 14, I think, during the event window. So she's got a lot of time ahead of her to kind of continue to blow our minds. The first winner for me coming out of Tahiti is someone else who's blown a few minds, but it was Kelly. But it was Kelly actually in the booth as an analyst. And it's a pretty rare thing for us, I think. But he's just, for me, like a one of one in terms of insight. And as I said, like analysis, anytime we can get him in the booth breaking down the performances of other people, it's like appointment viewing, because I just don't think there's like a parallel in terms of what he knows and what he sees. And of course, like enough can't be said about his heroics in round 1 and round 2 of the event. As a wild card, there's been a lot said about he's 54 years old. I don't think that number means anything when it comes to Kelly. But, you know, took out Eli in round 1, and then he has this like resurrection performance in round 2 against 3-time world champion Gabriel Medina. And his scoring waves, for sure, they're unreal. But the thing that really rattled me was watching how unbothered he seemed by those wipeouts at the start of the heat. We know, like 54, we said doesn't mean anything to Kelly, but like those 2 falls at the start of round 2, it wouldn't have surprised me if any other surfer in the event falls that way, and they need to go to the channel and like sit on the ski for a minute to like reset before. And he just was like straight back out there, like notches a heat turning 9, and it's just really kind of mind blowing to me. And ended up going down in round 3 to Tube Shaman Jack Robinson, of course. But it opened him up to like come in the booth and break down the performances of the world's best. So if we can get more of that, I think we'd be in good shape.
100%. I mean, there's something about like, I think you notice as people get older, their smaller wave stuff kind of falls apart first. Like the small twitch muscles and stuff like that. But as far as like when the waves get big, like that knowledge that he has and that experience is just, it's going to keep growing too. So it's cool to see like that performance was, you know, I feel like he could be doing that for another 5-10 years. And, you know, he strategically sponsored Chopes so that he could potentially have that opportunity. Was that planned or not? But a little side note on that would be like a winner and a half for me was watching his no grab takeoffs backside.
Right.
He's so under it, and he's just like pushing his board to where it needs to be, where if he was grabbing his rail, maybe he would have had to airdrop or a side slip, but he's just like doing his signature thing, almost nosediving and then pulling up into it. And then Katie Simmers had the same sort of wave, like a lightly smushed down version of it. Right. No grab takeoff, almost nosedive, pull up into it, and just backdoor the West Bowl. So I feel like those techniques are just like so guru. It was beautiful to see in action.
That's well said. And maybe dangling the Kelly Slater wild card is a good business play for us, where we can get some events on tour that we really want. If we like gas him up and be like, Man, it'd be amazing to see Kelly out at macaroni's and then Outerknown comes calling. They're like, "Here's some money for our macaroni's."
Lance
But
is right.
yeah,
What?
yeah. But I mean, beautifully said about the backside takeoff thing. Is there? Are there? You mentioned Katie. Like, is there another surfer currently on tour that you think kind of has that technique, or do you think Kelly, just because of he's been doing it for so long, is almost like in a class of his own, just on the no hand backside takeoff?
I think like a Seth or Baron could be a
Right.
situation. Like, I think you get to a point where you get so comfortable that it's not like a choice necessarily, maybe a preference, but
Hmm.
I think it's like a survival technique where
Right.
you end up just putting your body into places where it needs to be. And it's less about like your style and your performance, but whatever it takes. I think we saw that a lot in Seth. Like to me, Seth from a an early heat, like he was just so in flow and in motion. He's just he lets go of his rail when he needs to. He puts
Yeah.
his he does a little pump. He drags his butt. He drags his knee. It's just like this fluent. It's an artist that's lost in the flow state, making making his way through it in any way he needs to, and then he does it effortlessly. So it looks amazing. So
Yeah.
I yeah, I would say yeah. There's a couple people on that in this contest that have that. I think some people are still like in survival mode where they need to make the wave. They want to make the wave instead
Mm.
of letting go and just letting what happens happens. Softening into it instead of like hardening. And Slater specifically is obviously pretty good at that.
Interesting. Interesting. Second winner for me coming out of Tahiti are actually the regional, the EMEA women, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We had Anat Lelior from Israel, a rookie. She finishes runner up. Yolanda Hopkins from Portugal, another rookie. She finishes third. And then Nadia Aristarbe from Spain, yet another rookie, finishes fifth. And these ladies made up over a third of the entire women's quarterfinal fields. And this might be related to what you and I talked about before, Koa, regarding kind of that generational divide in performance at Teahupo'o this season. Do you think the results of the ladies we just talked about have more to do with the fact that they're rookies and maybe they had seen this wave coming as they're developing, so they built that into their kind of development program? Or maybe more to do with kind of the broader EMEA region and the kind of surfing approach that they developed there?
Um, I don't know. I think one thing they all had in common was they were just going for it.
Mm,
They were just going. They were having wipeouts. They were sending it on waves, and then that was rewarding them because they'd combine that commitment to a good wave, and they're getting eights and nines. So that was beautiful to see. I know I was like, "Whoa, this is epic!" And I think we all experienced that in the final where Anat was just like, "Oh, she won. She's feeling it. She's like
right.
so connected." Erin was making mistakes and she was picking the right waves. I didn't I don't have much experience with watching Anat, and I mean that showed me a whole side of her that I was like, "Whoa, that's epic." And that's where she's among the crew that's pushing the limits for women. It's super cool to
Yeah.
see.
And as you said, like those women were kind of going for it all event. And when those conditions cleaned up towards the end of the final day, it was like they started notching that commitment to like really good waves, and you could really see that there. It was really cool. Who is your third and final winner coming out of Tahiti?
I actually wasn't. I didn't do my second winner. We got caught on that
Oh, sorry, sorry.
on the no grab backside, but the no grab backside takeoff. But I wanted to just point out how many people were wearing helmets, and
Mm,
especially out there, it's so cool to see a lot of the women, a lot more men, and I think as these helmets get more comfortable, we'll see even more people. Um, and when you're sending it in such crazy conditions, I think there's the warriors that are just going into battle ready. You know, like I don't care what happens. This is my moment. I'm all in. And then I think it's cool that we're developing helmets that are going to help people kind of get to that stage. I personally have had moments where it didn't go so well, hit my head on the reef, getting these concussions that take me away from surfing for years at a time. And I don't want that to happen anymore. Even these like smaller head injuries that kind of bring those concussions back. And it's cool to see people wearing more helmets. We've been designing a helmet. I have this thing right here for the past 2 or 3 years, but really I've been a helmet wearer for the past 10 years of my life because I had to.
Right.
And then finally developing a helmet that disappears on your head and cuts through the water nicely and ideally doesn't affect you. So it's cool to see that more people are wearing helmets.
I was going to bring
surf
that
longer.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up too, because it feels like the helmet tech in terms of wearability and functionality and not disrupting your surf, but adding like so much more protection has gotten so much better in recent years. What's the one that you've been working on? What's that one called? Just for the listeners' benefit.
This one's called Knock Surf.
Okay.
And I mean, you said it, like the helmet wasn't innovated since Gath came out. And then it was a quantum leap when Oakley came out. I was so stoked to see that because I was like frustrated having to wear helmets that would get in my visual, affected my balance. I felt like I was getting more pounded with wearing it. But now like our specific design has a patented water flow system. So the channels like grab the water and make sure it drains to the back of you so you don't get water in your eyes. And then it also like there's none of this. The helmet's not it's not separating from your skull. It's not parachuting. It's not pulling you around. It just stays snug. And then it kind of essentially disappears. So that's a goal with it. Like make the safest, best helmet on the market that makes it feel like it looks cool. You're not uncomfortable. You're not having to make this huge decision. It's more like, why wouldn't I wear it? So that's kind of the goal with the whole project.
Makes sense. And we'll have you go back to back because I interrupted the first one. But who's your third and final winner coming out to you?
Yeah, the third and final win was seeing Griff and Seth hug at the end. Like, it was so emotional. I mean, watching Seth he's been on tour for so long and he's such a talented human, but it seems like there's always one little thing that doesn't go his way. And in this event, he looked so locked in and so in flow. And then to be able to verse Griffin, who is also like on another level of flow with his 10-point ride, with the way he's just tube scientist in the foam ball. They've been friends for so long and they've been on this journey together. And then like, I'm sure Griffin wanted to win, but seeing Seth win was almost like even more powerful. And then you could kind of see that in that embrace of like friendship and support. And that was like an emotional moment for all of us.
Yeah, that's a great one. And it ties in with my final winner, which was Seth as well, which I know is kind of boring. He's the event winner, but more kind of like what it means for someone like Seth. As you said, he's such a good surfer and such a talented human, like in almost every condition, but the results have been pretty hard for him to come by, especially this year. And he's hardly the first. Like there's so many great surfers that get onto the tour and they don't quite get to the winner's dais. And they, in a way, they kind of become like also-rans and not legitimate event threats. And if you look at Seth's path to the Tahiti win, we mentioned some of it already. It's so radical, right? You got local star Mayo in round 1, reigning world champ Iago Dora in round 2, pipe master Baron Mamiya in round 3, tube weapon Al Cleland Jr. in the quarters. You got world champ Idla Fajera in the semis, and as you mentioned, Griffin in the final. And if you look at a trajectory like that on paper, as well as like Seth's results so far this season, you really couldn't be faulted for thinking like, oh, one of those guys is going to take him out. But that really betrays the fact that Seth is just such a really gnarly surfer, especially in the barrel. And so from that perspective, it kind of makes all the sense in the world. So in a way, I kind of felt like his win was such another important reminder that the depth of talent on the CT is like often really underappreciated, and like these guys are all over the place and they can go on a run at almost any venue.
Absolutely. It's crazy. I mean, Seth is one of those people that in a free surf, he's not scared. Like when we're surfing pipe, it's washing it through, second reefing. He's out there just like heart rate 36. He's just like boom, 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 boom. Like doesn't get spikes, and he's going on the gnarliest waves that come in. So I feel like for him to be able to tap into that realm in with a jersey on is pretty rare, but you see it at Pipeline, you see it at Chopo. He's had his results there. It was just so cool that he was able to get those in that flow and get gifted with those waves and surf them to an insane level.
His heart rate in waves like that's like considerably lower than it would be in the checkout line at Foodland or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Well, that's winners and losers. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we are going to talk surfboards. Don't go anywhere. Today's episode is presented by Rourke. Rourke makes essential gear for the modern traveler, inspiring our community to seek adventure wherever they are in the world and wherever they may find themselves. Whether you're chasing swell, scaling cliffs on a remote atoll, or running through a dense jungle, Rourke knows adventure never fails. Check out Rourke for all your travel gear. Welcome back to the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Koa Smith. Koa, it's time to talk about surfboards. We have the Surfboard Empire CT Shaper Rankings presented by VEA. Shaper Ranking! We've been running these since 2003. Geez, 2003 would be a whole thing. Since 2023. It's a combined ranking of men's and women's performances for the world's best CT shapers, and we count all the results, quarterfinals or better. This year we did something a little different where we capped it to a max of 2 results per team program. So a board program can get their results from the top 2 men's results, quarterfinals or better, top 2 women, or one of each. It's a bit of a departure from how we've done it the last few years, but we did rerun the new formula over the last 3 years, and Matt Biolis lost surfboards. They still win each year. That's a big windup. But you know, for someone like yourself, Koa, you've had relationships with a bunch of different shapers throughout your career. Can you give us a little bit of background on, you know, how you personally think about surfboards, what those relationships have been like, and who you're working with today?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, surfboards are, you know, we couldn't be surfing without them, but the quality of them and how they work are a make or break for people's careers. But I think it changes with your approach and how you want to surf. I think the best surfboard for me is the one that just totally disappears below your feet, and it becomes where do you want to go and what do you want to do in your own limits, and the surfboard is just a part of that. We've all had magic surfboards. I've had 2 magic surfboards in my life, where my surfing went to a whole new level, and I couldn't even believe what I could pull off. So I think as surfers, each board we're hoping is that magic surfboard. I've had hundreds of surfboards in my life. I've only had 2 magic surfboards. So it's pretty interesting.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I'm sure this is something listeners are obsessed with too, but like, why do you think it is that like, you can definitely look back on hundreds of surfboards you've had, and like 2 of these are magic, and I love the way you articulated it. It's like, disappears under my feet, and like, huge change in my own surfing just from this one board. Why do you think it's so hard to replicate that for like, with all the advancements in technology? Like, why is it so hard to be like, why can I only have 2? Like, why can't I find one and then I can get another one next year and the year after that?
I think surfing is a very emotional, connecting sport as well. If I got on my magic board now, my mindset's different, my body's different. I might be going through something. I might be in a negative mindset. My body might be like tight and creaky. There's so many elements. And then there's the board, which, you know, the blanks are different. The shaper could have been feeling a little different that day. The glasser could have been feeling a little different. just it can't be replicated, which kind of adds to the whole lore and magic of surfing in general.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in my history, I've done kind of the more competitive mindset of really needing that F1 dialing in, and then I've gone down the alternative board path as well, working with Matt Parker at Album, using more asymmetrical, more quads, and just really experimenting with the different feelings and what they give me. I
Mm.
think a big difference between the F1 boards and the alternative crafts just depends on what you're trying to get out of the surfboard. If you're okay with like you want more speed, but then maybe you won't be able to pivot as quickly or as reliably, you kind of got to find what works for your approach to the waves, you know?
Right. And I'm curious, you mentioned, in your own 2-minute bio too, right? Like there was a lot of focus on competition when you were younger, and then you were able to translate a lot of that success into free surfing. When you were younger, before you transitioned more towards free surfing, although I'd argue you probably did both the whole time, like free surfing and competitive surfing, was there a lot of overlap in the boards you ordered? Did you have a lot of alternative shapes or even any alternative shapes that you would ride every now and then when you're more focused on competitive surfing? Or was that something where it feels almost like two different eras of your surfing?
I always wanted multiple fun boards
Mm,
and multiple barrel boards in my quiver so that those specific conditions would help me unlock the type of surfing that I am experimenting with. If I want to drop in and there's a little bit of a foam ball, I can spin a quick 360 before I pull into the barrel. If I get barreled, I want to be able to come out and kind of, do a good maneuver. So I think it gets really confusing for me, and now I'm working with Sharp Eye surfboards, so working close with Marcio, but more so with Taylor Clark, who I grew up competing against, and
right.
we're the same age. He's so good at surfing. He's almost a scratch golfer, and he just like obsesses with surfboards. So we're trying to find like that F1, of course, you want that. And then you want that fun board that kind of is more creative, but then that really reliable barrel board that's going to make sure you're catching that wave. You're able to do that bottom turn when the wave's death defying, and just allowing you to do the things you're trying to do, But
Yeah.
that requires a lot of different models and a lot of different boards, which is tricky.
Makes sense. And I mean, it's funny you bring up Sharp Eye because Sharp Eye, they're kind of late 2010s, early 2020s, the were a phenomenon. Like with, Felipe and Kanoa and like all these surfers that were performing so well, they were actually the catalyst for coming up with the CT Shaper rankings, because I'm like, I want to look at the data and be like this is amazing. And we started recording in 2023. And since then, it's been Lost Surfboards, Matt Biolos have been like on like a mid 90s Chicago Bulls style run. They've been like really radical in terms of their success. And they have a big team, but they also just have a really quality team. And it feels like surfing goes through those eras, right? It's like Channel Islands had a crazy team back in the day, like DHD with Mick and Steph, or JS with, the Irons brothers and Joel and stuff. And, when you were younger and you were focused more on competition, how much does like the team rider part of a board program appeal to like a young prospect? I mean, did you kind of want to gravitate towards board programs that had really good teams, or was it more just, the shaper relationship you had?
I mean, I think the people that ride the board, you kind of want to surf like them. Like it
Mm,
sparks some feeling within you. But what I've found in my later years is it's actually the relationship with the shaper and how much
mm,
time they have to hear your stuff, to hear your feedback, to apply the feedback, and to help you really like shape what you're trying to do. So that's what I would prioritize now. And I think um, everyone that is really connected to their equipment has a really good relationship with their shaper. Like they're talking all the time. they're sending clips
Right.
whenever they get them. They're talking to him after sessions. Like I see Taylor Clark will come down for a lower swell and he'll sit on the beach. He'll catch a couple waves, but then he'll sit on the beach and he'll watch all his athletes, and then he'll talk to them when they come in, notice what he noticed, what they noticed. Then he's going back and he's creating those files and implementing them, getting them a new board to try it out, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned you've had 2 magic boards in the course of your life. Can you give us the details on those, or are they kept in the spiritual
Yeah, no,
lockbox?
100%. I was young for both of them. I think I was 10 years old and I was 12 years old. And the one was a custom JS tractor. Um, and I ended up winning 18 contests in a row on it. It was just like, and then I broke it at Makaha, and I was like, it was a sad, sad moment.
Oh no.
And then the second one was also a tractor, actually, but it was a hand-me-down from Kolohe Andino. And it had glass on fins, and it was a similar vibe. Like whatever I could imagine on the lip, it would just do it. And I could just throw things and I'd land it. I was like, whoa, this is like the best feeling in the world. And I've had close to magic board since, but nothing like beyond where it just, you're like, I didn't even know I could do that.
Yeah.
Search continues.
Never ending. What's your take on, years ago you would have like what I feel like was a lot more condition or wave specialization, right? You'd have a tours would work with a certain board builder most of the year. They'd go to places like Tahiti or places like Hawaii, North Shore, different kinds of waves, different kind of power. And it wouldn't be that uncommon to see them work with a local shaper. And a lot of times, the Hawaii-based shapers built boards for Tahiti as well. If you look at, this year's event in Tahiti, right? Aaron Brooks wins on a Mayhem. Seth Moniz wins on a Sharp Eye. Anat's riding silver surfboards out of Brazil. And then Griffin's also on a Mayhem. Do you feel like the shapers are getting better at building equipment for every kind of condition, or do you still think there's a little bit of value in, when you're on the North Shore or in places like Tahiti with good power that, working with board builders like maybe it's Takora, maybe it's Arakawa, maybe it's Pang, maybe it's someone I'm not even thinking of. Do you still think that holds a lot of weight for elite surfers?
I think similar to the conversation we have with Kelia Gallina, a home break, you're going to be a master at your home break, whether you're a surfer or a shaper. So I think there's an edge to these shapers that have that style of surfing and style of break where they're most used to, but also where their athletes are most used to. Part of my reason for coming to Sharp Eye is to help develop their bigger wave boards and kind of like that Hawaii style board, and also like the fun board, barrel board style. But I think it depends on these shapers now have these strategic athletes that can give them that on the in the field feedback to help like round off all of their models and stuff. I mean, for CI, you got Baron, and now they have like an insane pipe board,
right?
So I think definitely nowadays things are getting more rounded out. Where before it was like, I'm going to Hawaii, boom, I'm getting an Arakawa or Takoro, a Paisel, or I'm going to France, I'm getting a Bradley, like
right.
Going to Australia, I'm getting a tractor. So it's a little bit more well-rounded.
Makes sense. And as someone, I'm feel privileged getting to talk to you about this particular topic because it's near and dear to my heart. But someone like yourself who was a high-level competitive surfer, someone who's been a world-class free surfer, who's, as you pointed out, like I'm looking for the F1 board. I'm also looking for barrel boards. I'm also experimenting with kind of alternative craft. One of the things I love seeing in the rare moments we get to see it on the CT are when the world's best surfers do ride something somewhat unconventional, whether it's, Dane Reynolds with the MTFA out in France, Kelly riding the Wizard Sleeve or the Deep Six, at the Gold Coast and Snapper Rocks and on and on. If you were to look at the 2026, CT calendar, I'm thinking of the 13 events, what venue do you think is the best one for CT surfers to experiment on something, maybe like it's a performance fish or something that's just not your conventional F1 shape? I'll run through the venues for the listeners' benefit too. We got Bells Beach, Margaret River, Snapper Rocks, Raglan, El Salvador, La Libertad, Saquarema, Teahupo'o, Cloudbreak, Trestles, Peniche, Cloud9 now, Surf Abu Dhabi, and Pipe. Is there any one venue of those from the CT this year where it's like, if I were on tour, I'd be interested in experimenting with an alternative shape at this wave?
I mean, I experiment heavily in barrel kind of slabbier conditions. So my pipe boards and my Chopo boards, potentially my Cloud9 board, would be a lot different than what people are riding. I think we saw it with Felipe as a great example in Raglan. He took out a 2+1 fish retro looking thing from Sharp Eye with no pad backside. Everyone's like, what is he doing? Why, But then you saw it in his performance where he had that extra edge, that extra spark. So I think that, I know Felipe rides a lot of twin fins, which is it's like training wheels, really, where you're training how smooth you can be and how little you can move. And then you're able to apply that back to that race car surfboard. And it changes and adapts your style. I think when people jump on these boards and they think like, this is giving me that extra spark, that extra bar, but do I want to really ride it when I'm putting on a jersey? I think that's the risk. But you saw it with Slater, he would do that. He would be like, yes, I'm going to ride this board that doesn't look like a shortboard. And I think people are still afraid that if you are surfing with a board that doesn't have a pointed nose, then maybe you won't get judged the same.
Yeah.
It has a different look. I remember hearing a story about Mason Ho was riding a quad, and he was hiding it from the judges. He wouldn't show. But then when you're surfing, you have this extra spark and extra speed, and people are like, whoa, that's different. But then they saw that it was a quad, and supposedly they started underscoring him because it was like he had an advantage or something. So I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a funny example. I would like to see it. I would like to see it push more, especially quads. I ride a lot of quads. They're so fast and so reliable. If you can get one that also is good for turns, then it's like you have extra horsepower on your board.
I like it. I'd love to see it too. We're going to do one more quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we have some questions for Koa specifically. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back to the lineup. I am Dave Prodan here with Koa Smith. Koa, before you go, we put out a few feelers for questions at the Lineup Pod on Instagram. We got a bunch back for you, but we've whittled them down to 3. First one is actually from another one of our co-hosts on the podcast. It's from Mitch Tails. He gets priority question asking if he wants it. But the question for you, Koa, is, as a barrel expert, how easy or difficult is it to select the right equipment for a wave like Teahupo'o through a waiting period like the one we just had? Which is probably a good question, right? We talked about the conditions. For someone like yourself, would you have known every day that's the board for today, or is it kind of difficult?
I would have had 2 lines of boards there. One that was good for barrels, but if I had to go do turns that I could be comfortable on, I'd have those boards. And then I'd have the boards for when the waves were real. Those would be 4 fins, absolutely. Especially with how fast you go at Chopo and how hard the surface of the water is. Having that quad to be able to make up for that speed and also track over the foam ball with more speed, I would for sure be riding a quad out there. It definitely depends on your style of surfing. If you want to try to get in there early, I feel like the most successful approach right now is riding more of a smaller board. You're under the lip, you're able to airdrop and then make your speed run to get through that West Bowl. But yeah, I would have two separate quivers with me.
Makes sense. Next question is from I Dane Ladd. We talked about this a little bit. He says, do you think alternative boards have a place on the world tour? I'll make that question a little bit sharper, Koa. If you were the guru advising any surfer on the CT in 2027, and you had to say, we're going to be doing your F1 quiver and then variations up and down off that F1 quiver. We're going to be really conservative because we want to keep that blade as sharp as possible. Or you're going to say, like, every event we're going to have two different boards in your quiver. Which path would you take advising a CT surfer going for a world title?
I would have a very small wave board just in case. And for me, that's a 2+1. I feel like it's cheating. Like you go so fast, but then you have like the maneuverability of a 3-fin. Depends if you like epoxy or not. For me, in smaller waves, epoxy takes less effort and you can still like throw a lot of spark on like waves. I'm talking like knee high. You know, we've seen those events that are just like, that person needs different equipment, you know?
Right.
And then it would be interesting for more like point break waves to see someone get comfortable on a quad for ripping. Like I'm picturing, I know we don't have it on tour this year, but the like iconic J-Bay event where you could ride a quad or maybe even a twin fin where it's just effortless. You're going so much faster than everyone else. And it's allowing you to take a different line than everyone else, which then makes you stand out a little bit, which might make you have an edge. But it would be up to that athlete to feel so confident on it. I mean, I guess Felipe is another great example, right?
Sure.
He won a world title at lowers on a quad, and I think he rides that at J-Bay as well. So, you know, I think you saw Julian backside riding quads sometimes, which was really cool. At Cloud Break especially, he would always play with a quad backside. So yeah, those would be my two must-haves in my quiver.
I like it. And I like what you said about the point of difference thing. Obviously super subjective, but it's a subjectively scored sport. But like, I think the point of difference is something I've noticed over the last 2 decades, like working here, is that if the judges are scoring elite surfing all day and it's too homogenized in some ways, having that point of difference really is an advantage. Whether, as you pointed out, like you're going that much faster than everyone else, maybe instead of doing 4 turns, you're doing 2 huge turns. And that really, like, I think it stands out a lot, especially at the CT level. So, last question is from @TreeHatJ, who says, you're not only a pro surfer, but very successful in entrepreneurship plus business with Sunrise Shack, Rourke, Chase Travel. What is the key to your success in all these different areas?
I think if you get really good at one thing and just go all in on it, then you can apply that knowledge to whatever you want. So I think like I wasn't super studious. I went to homeschool, kind of like fizzled out, but I got my graduation, and I think that because I was so into surfing and learning from what it takes to get better, to be patient, to train for it, to be strategic with it, I think applying that to everything else in my life has been super successful. So, yeah, I think if you're someone coming up in the surf world right now, you gotta be strategic because it's different. You know, it's really hard to make a career unless you're on the CT, unless you have a full-time YouTube channel. If you have a full-time YouTube channel, then you're also a storyteller, a videographer, an editor, an agent. You know, like you have to wear many hats, and I think I can attribute all of that to pushing myself in my surfing career.
It's great advice. Before we go, we're recording. It's the middle of August. What do the next few months look like for you, Koa? You got places you want to be, projects you're working on. What's the rest of 2026 look like?
Man, I mean, we're starting to see, and we've been seeing what Super El Nino looks like. And if you
Mm,
look at a swell map, we're able to see these different parts of the ocean that are really feeling it. So I think it's going to be a really, really busy, exciting year all over the world. What I've already noticed is usually you have one place that's good, and everyone goes there. But we've had like three different storm systems at the same time, which has been spreading everyone, which makes for a lot of exciting stories, and just seeing the whole surf world evolve and get pushed is really exciting. So I'm just like I'm following this well.
right on. Well, Koa, thank you so much for coming on the lineup. Hope you come back and do it again sometime soon. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what you get up to over the next few months.
Epic. Thanks for having me.